Okay, here we go then. A mad old world, isn't it? Boxing and sport at times. Eddie, firstly, to you, look, we saw the announcement last night. You said it would break the internet. I think the response speaks for itself, really. But firstly, just about the Matchroom Talent Agency, before we talk about your first signing. Where did this idea come from yourself, and why was this something that you wanted to start?
I mean, ultimately, we've represented athletes for over 40 years. You know, I started my professional career as a sports agent, you know, dealing with all kinds of different sportsmen, you know, across PGA Tour, cricket, rugby. And I know how to look after athletes, but I also know how to drive value for athletes. I know how to build brands. I know how to build profile. I know how to stand alongside them. And more importantly, I know how to get what they deserve. So I always felt like, you know, you've seen discussions with AJ across the football market and stuff like that. I felt like it was a natural progression with our relationship with the talent, with the relationship with broadcasters, with sponsors, and with the fans, that we could actually have a pretty amazing project on our hands in terms of athlete representation. Given everything that's happening at the moment around the world, across the boxing space, across the MMA space, the conversation started actually with Michael Rideout, you know, of The Zone, where he was talking about Tom Aspinall. And I know, you know, there's been a couple of conversations, and I looked at this man who is really the flagship of the UFC in terms of that profile of the undisputed heavyweight champion. We all know that in our sport, that is the absolute coup de grace. There's nothing bigger. And, you know, I know that he's been through a little bit of a tough time lately, and it was really one conversation on Zoom, and I just thought to myself, this guy needs some proper representation. I mean, what you're looking at is one of the greatest fighters in the UFC. As I said, the undisputed heavyweight world champion. He is a man of the people, he's a real fighting man of integrity, and he's a stone cold killer as well. So how is this guy not an even bigger star that he is? How does he not have the backing? How is he not respected in certain rooms in the way that he should be? So couple that with the politics of everything that's going on and a cool little story as well, what we can create is the hype and the news that will, as we said, blow up the internet. And that's what it's done. Within 12 hours, you've seen what we do. You've seen the noise that we create. And now it's about moving forward with Tom, building him commercially, building his profile, growing that relationship with brands and fans, and also making sure he gets what he absolutely deserves for the commercial power that he has as a fighter.
Tom, welcome to the Matchroom Talent Agency, of course, first of all. When the conversation started happening with Eddie, he said it was just one Zoom call. What excited you about the vision, first of all, that was put to you by Eddie Hearn and the Matchroom Talent Agency?
I think, like most people in combat sports, I've been following Eddie and Matchroom for a long time. I know all about him. I've got mutual friends who work with him and stuff. And when I spoke to Eddie, it just seemed like it worked. It made a lot of sense to me. I think as UFC fighters, we are in contracts that we can't change, but there's a lot of value that we could make outside of the cage as well. Eddie seen that. That's what me and my small team thought for a long time, but I wanted to just expand the team a little bit and, you know, broaden my horizons a little bit and make as much money commercially outside the octagon as well as inside. And Eddie and Matchroom are on board with that, so I'm on board with them.
Eddie, I mentioned that word, vision. What is your promise to Tom Aspinall? What is the vision at this stage?
Well, firstly, to make sure that he's recognised for the revenue that he drives. You know, ultimately, every sport is about the athlete and the talent. And we know when he steps in the octagon, we know what happens. Broadcasters pay a fortune. Every seat's filled in the arena. Every inch of that mat has a brand and a sponsor across it. And without the talent, without the fighters, that revenue can't be driven. And you are the elite of the elite. You're the undisputed heavyweight champion. I said to him, you know, I don't want to, sometimes when I say it, I don't want him to feel like, to get offended by this, because he'll snap my neck in two. But it's like, when I spoke to him for the first time, it was like I was talking to someone that didn't really realise who he was or what he was, which is a massive star in this country and a massive global star. One of the biggest stars in fight sports. And as we say in boxing, effectively the baddest man on the planet, but in MMA. And, you know, now we've got an interesting future ahead. Sometimes a narrative can get spun on you that, one, deflates your mojo, and two, can just make you feel like, I don't really want to do it anymore. And when I spoke to him, we started talking about his injuries and, you know, talking about the doctor stuff and the multiple surgeries that he's had. It was like, mate, like, we've got to bounce back from this. And you've got to realise how big you are. And I see a man that's very determined as a fighter to get back in there. And I say prove. He doesn't really need to prove. He's fought everyone that's been put in front of him. But he'll continue to do that and show the world how great he is.
Do you believe this has come at the right time for you as well then, Tom, as Eddie just touched on there? It has been a little bit of a frustrating period for you, but I imagine with an announcement like this, more motivated than ever.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Me and my team, now with Eddie and Matchroom on board, we want to get back in there as soon as possible, but obviously it has to be done at the right time. And these guys have come on board at the right time. I feel like I'm ready to move to the next step in terms of commercial value and stuff like that, and I'm motivated to get back in there and do my thing.
And the questions will come from the media, obviously, Eddie. I think at first people thought Tom Aspinall's now your latest heavyweight hope in the world of boxing. But in terms of the deals and, of course, with Dana White and the UFC, how is that all going to work with yourself behind the scenes?
Oh, look, he's under contract to the UFC, and that's not expected to change. I mean, we know that. You know, I know there's been made a lot of you know, kind of the back and forths in the last couple of days. But, you know, as Dana said last night, we've generally got a good relationship. I know there's a back and forward on the boxing, but that's going to pass and blow over. I think that, you know, all athletes need to be represented in the right way, especially MMA fighters and UFC fighters. And that's coming from a rights holder. That's coming from an event promoter who understands, as I said, the revenue streams, the money in the pot. And, you know, it's quite ironic because I deal with a lot of pains in the arses in boxing who are managers. And it's funny now to move into that world myself. We won't be doing it in boxing, but we will be doing it in MMA, and we will be doing it in other sports and other entertainment assets as well. The phone hasn't stopped since yesterday. I mean, we've had over a dozen MMA fighters who have come on to us saying, can we talk? How's this going to work? And it's going to be really interesting moving forward who we choose to work with. But we have, as I said, the coup de grace, as far as I'm concerned, in MMA, and that's Tom Aspinall, a Brit, you know, from the Northwest, who is, like I say, the people's champion, and now he can get what he deserves to go to the next level. And
is it not just sports stars as well, though, that you're looking at?
That's why I called it Matchroom Talent Agency, because as the strapline says, which apparently we nicked off Tom as well, ordinary people, extraordinary talent. And it's not just limited to the world of sport. It's people who we feel we can build into stars, which is something we've been doing over many decades.
When can we expect to see you back in the cage, Tom? What is the latest on that timeline?
Like Eddie said, I've had multiple surgeries, so things do have to be right for me physically as well. So just when I'm under the doctor's, whatever he says at the minute. So I'm back in the gym now doing a bit of training, and yeah, just the full focus is now just coming back and doing my thing.
I guess how nice is it for you? We just touched on it earlier, but just to have this added level of security that just allows you to just concentrate on what you do best, which is, of course, in the cage, must feel nice as well.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to focus on my fighting. Do you know what I mean? Eddie and Matchroom can take care of that stuff. Like we just spoke about, I've had a small team for a long time in terms of media and commercially and stuff, and I just want to expand on that and grow that and have a more powerful voice on my team than what I've had before.
I do have to ask you a bit of a tricky question as we're up here live on the stage. Dana White has spoke about it this week, a 4-round boxing contest between Eddie Hearn and Dana White. Who are you picking?
Well, what do you think?
I think Eddie's got the size.
I think Eddie's got the size on him.
He said to me, if you get beat in that, the deal's over.
I might have to go with someone else, mate, if Eddie loses.
I would like to officially appoint Andy Aspinall as my trainer. You know, I mean, boxing-wise, yes. If we do move on the ground, I know he's got me covered on that. But yeah, I mean, the big problem is I've seen Dana White spar. He ain't bad. But I told Tom this. He said, you couldn't lose that fight. So what can I say?
Yeah, I think you've got the size, but I think Dana's got the pedigree. Yeah. Maybe. We'll go with that.
Thanks,
final word in closing from you, Tom, just before we do open the room to the media. Just, I guess, as you just touched on earlier, just over the moon to get this over the line and the start of an exciting chapter.
Yeah, me and anyone who's followed my career knows how close me and my dad are. My dad is my manager, he's my trainer, he has been from the beginning and stuff. We were saying hopefully this will be the start where other MMA fighters can look at this and be like, shit, look what he's doing, look at the money that he's getting, look at the opportunity that he's getting with Matchroom and Eddie and stuff like that. Like, I want to be a bit of a trailblazer for MMA fighters who can make a lot of money and be successful outside the octagon as well as inside, because a lot of these guys, you know, they're bitching and complaining privately, publicly about the money that we get paid. But listen, that's what we signed up for. So there are other opportunities out there for fighters, and it's out there for the taking for all of us.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I believe we are going to open the floor now to the media. So over to you guys, one at a time.
Tom, down here to your left. How you doing? What was your reaction when Eddie and Matchroom broached you with this? Was it a bit of shock or a bit of excitement? Tell me what the initial thoughts were.
I was excited by it. I didn't really know Eddie I've met him a couple of times before, but I didn't know him personally. But I've seen him from afar, and I liked the way that him and Frank operated stuff anyway. I felt like we'd get on. And when we met, I felt like we got on instantly. I feel like we're all on the same page, and I was excited about it.
And has Eddie's commercial navigation of, say, Anthony Joshua and the success that he's gotten, he obviously helped get the Under Armour deal and Lucas Aid and things like that, were those primary factors in you deciding to go with him?
Yeah, of course. Like, as athletes in any sport, we've got a short window of opportunity that we can make a lot of money. And with what's gone on with my career and my recent injuries and stuff, I want to make as much money as possible. I want to set up my family for generations, and that's what I'm looking to do with this.
And we haven't been hearing from you that much over the last few months, but mentally, how has the recovery been? Because obviously physically is one thing, but mentally it's a completely different thing.
Mate, it's been a really tough time for me. I'm not going to sit up here and lie. It's been fucking tough, man. Like, it's been hard to be in the position that I've been in, and not everyone, but a lot of people thinking what they think about me. It's been tough, but I'm obviously looking to come back from that and do good things.
Eddie, obviously Tom's already UFC heavyweight champion. What kind of new opportunities can Matchroom Talent Agency provide to Tom?
Well, so many across the commercial world. I mean, look, Andy has dealt with the UFC for many, many years. We'll set across that with him, and we'll help, plan out the future in that respect as well. But away from the octagon, commercially, we need to drive value with partners that already exist. We need to make sure that we build the Tom Aspinall brand further in this country and particularly globally as well. We need to look at broadcast relationships. We need to, I believe he's going to be a great pundit as well. He's going to be the pundit on the upcoming Callum Smith show in Liverpool for DAZN. He knows his boxing. I think he speaks extremely well. All kinds of opportunities. They've got an amazing team across social. His YouTube channel is already firing really well, doing some big numbers as well. There's a lot that we can add. The key is to drive his value, to bring in revenue, like I said, away from the octagon, but also as we reach this stage in his career, look at those fight opportunities. We know that situation with the UFC, whether that gets extended, however long that lasts, there's other opportunities away from that. But we know the contractual position at the moment, and we respect that. So we work within our parameters, but making sure that we just drive his value all around and give him great advice across the board.
Hi, Tom. You mentioned other opportunities there. Do you have any ambitions in boxing or another combat sport?
I knew as soon as I signed with Eddie and Matchroom that this is going to be the question that people are asking. Tom's going to boxing, and that isn't my intention at the moment at all. Maybe before I finish my career, maybe, but at the moment, MMA is where I'm at.
Eddie.
That was a maybe, I'm just saying,
Eddie, with Matchroom Talent Agency, is it just going to be the creme de la creme and the top, or will it be emerging talent as well?
Yeah, I think we're going to really take our time. I think I want to work with special people, like we said, special people, special talents, people that are at the top of their sport, but that doesn't mean they're at the top of their sport now. And I think we're going to be looking really diversely across the board. And of course, we saw all of the big sort of profile and media coverage across the football agency of Anthony Joshua. I spoke to him yesterday, and that is an extension of this. So you're going to see quite a big move from us in the football market as well. But yeah, of course, initially we want to take on the people who are at the top of the respected sport and profession, but also look at those coming through and start the journey with them as well.
You spoke there a minute ago about the fact that loads of UFC fighters have reached out already and that they're interested in coming on board, and again, talking about footballers there, but have you signed deals with other athletes now, or like how many have you signed, and when would you be looking to release them if so?
I think right as we sit now, with the inception of the company about 24 hours ago, Tom Aspinall is the sole member of the Matchroom Talent Agency. But over the last couple of months and years, we've had so many people asking us to represent them, but we've never actually been in the space. As you know, in boxing, I mean, it's a complete conflict of interest to be a manager and a promoter. And that's not something we're going to be doing in the boxing space. Commercially, there are different conversations there with AJ and stuff like that. But sitting across fight contracts and stuff like that is not something that we'll be involved with. So right now, Tom Aspinall is the king of the crop in terms of the Matchroom Talent Agency. But now, as I've said, in this, 14, 15-hour window, we've had a lot of approaches from all kinds of different talent, but particularly in the MMA space, because I think there is really a lack of representation in that space that I think is really impartial. I think there's a lot of managers within the space who have an alignment with organisations, but we're bringing something completely different, which is, we understand the organisations because we are one in boxing and in other sports, but we also understand the value of the fighter and the athlete, and we understand the numbers inside out. See, that's the key. Whenever you talk to a boxing manager, boxing's very transparent, and we don't mind it being transparent because actually we're extremely fair with the fighters. So ultimately, every manager knows how much money is in the pot for every show. And I know how much is in the pot for every show there, and I also know how much is in the pot in MMA. So that's something that I think will evolve over time, and as new contracts evolve and new fighters make their way through that system.
Congratulations, Tom. Congratulations, Eddie. Question for you, Tom. Eddie's mentioned multiple times during this conference so far that he will get you what you deserve. What is it that you feel like you do deserve?
I mean, that's a good question, mate. I like that. As I said before, I think that whether it be publicly or privately, a lot of MMA fighters, UFC champions, they like to complain about the money that we're getting paid. But that's the contract that we all signed. We're not going to get more than that. I've accepted that. And I want to make as much money outside of the octagon as I possibly can. I think commercially there's a lot to be done for my profile. I think financially there's a lot, my ceiling's a lot higher than what I'm getting paid at the moment. And I want to explore as much as that as possible.
Tom, I know you briefly touched on it then, but we've seen Dana come in and he's paying boxers a lot more than in the UFC. Did that bother you at first at all?
I mean, I think it's bothered everybody. I think if one guy's getting paid 15 million and the other guy's getting 15 grand, I think that's a big difference, mate. Which is part of the reason that I want to explore other options.
Is part of exploring other options for when you do negotiate, you can say, look, I'm earning X amount outside the ring, maybe I should be earning a bit more in the ring. Well, in the octagon, sorry.
Well, yeah. I'm aware that Eddie and Matchroom are a powerhouse organisation. They'll be working, advising my dad, who is my manager. He has been my manager from the beginning. And I'm sure they'll be getting the point across well for how things stand financially in the future.
Thank you.
Hello. Good to see everyone. Thank you. Tom, this one for you. Sort of piggybacking off that, we've seen, obviously, with Conor Benn getting what he's reported to be getting from Zuffa. We've seen Michael Venom Page come out recently and almost sort of piggyback off that and say about how he thinks the UFC fighters should be also getting higher purses. Do you expect more UFC fighters to be coming out talking about the fact that obviously Zuffa's purses do seem to be more inflated than the UFC?
I don't know. Like, everyone can talk about it as much as they want, but what's talking going to do? People have got to start exploring their options and really making a stand for what they believe in, I think. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I know that talking on interviews isn't really going to do much. So hopefully I'm here, like, I know me personally, every time I'm going in there, I'm risking my health. That's part of combat sports. And I want to be compensated for that as much as I possibly can.
You can shout.
Mate, I'm just looking forward to the big fight, Eddie versus Dana. I think it's going to be a great matchup. I think it's one that's going to get the fans excited and stuff. No, I don't know. I've got a great team behind me. I'm not worried about anything, to be honest. I think it's all going to work out for the best.
I'll just add to that, Deck, as well, because when we did this, of course, I'm not going to lie, there was, we was looking to make this move, but also having spoken to Tom and looking at the current climate, I knew that it was a move that would create 50 times the noise right now. You have to remember, the first conversation that me and Tom Aspinall had was a week ago, something like that. And then Wednesday was the first time we ever met in person properly. And it all got done very quickly. And because of what's happening at the moment, of course, it's a much bigger story. There's a much bigger buzz. There's plenty more hype. And all of a sudden, within 12 hours, Tom Aspinall is a much bigger star than he's ever been before, right? So that's job done. But we're actually using that as a benefit. But I think the sizes of the organisation and the smartness of the organisations will also lend itself to, we come in peace. This isn't about me sitting up here saying, what Tom's earning's a joke. He needs to be on this. We're not fighting for the UFC. We want this. Not at all. We'll calmly and as a team work through the process of what we're doing with Tom's career. We also understand and respect the contract that's in place and the contracts that's been signed. So again, you're not, I know some people will be screaming and shouting insults. This is not the game. The game is we're a professional agency that deals with the event, the rights holders in a professional manner. But we also battle fiercely for our clients. And we will be doing that with Tom as well. No, I mean, if it does make life difficult for Tom, what kind of organisation are they? What, you're going to make life difficult for Tom because he's signed with a manager? I mean, ultimately, we're probably going to be a lot easier to deal with than a lot of the managers he has to deal with, But Tom was in a position where he needed representation at a high level and respect and a voice to be heard. And we tick every one of those boxes.
Hello, you guys. Hope you're doing well. First of all, congratulations in putting all of this together. I just want to talk to you, Eddie, in particular, in regards to this whole venture, really diversifying in a new market. I just want to talk to you and ask you, with all the experience that you've had in boxing and in other sports, what has been the one thing that you've learned throughout all that time in boxing or in other sports that you've dealt with, and how you're going to look to implement some of the lessons that you've learned into this new venture?
Well, I think understanding how to build the brand of an athlete, I think is something, don't forget, our job is to create and spin a narrative of storyline around a fighter or a fight. And we've done that for years and years and years, across snooker, across darts, across boxing, and in many other sports as well. So I think we know how to build a brand is the first thing. We also understand, as I said earlier, all of the relationships with broadcasters, with arenas, with gates, with sponsors. We know everything about the industry across every level. So when we're having conversations with those rights holders, and UFC would be an example, I know exactly what's in the pot. And I know what we're paying out of our pot. So why aren't you paying the same out of your pot? You know what I mean? It's a really interesting storyline and dynamic where all of a sudden we're going from promoter to manager in another sport, but also in fight sports. And let's be honest, MMA and boxing are very similar in that respect. The revenue streams are all the same. Those key revenue streams of broadcast revenue, gate receipts, and sponsorship. They're the three pillars of revenue that MMA events and boxing events all stand consistently alongside. So we've got to fight the corner of our clients when we know what's in the pot, and it just seems to be a huge discrepancy between the two sports, yet the same model.
For Tom, it's looking likely that Alex Pereira will be moving up to heavyweight to fight John Jones at the White House. Firstly, what do you make of Alex Pereira moving into the division? And secondly, what is your opinion on that fight, should it take place?
I think Alex Pereira is a generational talent. I think he's one of the best UFC fighters that the UFC's ever seen, to be honest with you. I think he's fantastic, and I think it's a very interesting fight. I think everybody who's a UFC fan will be tuning in. I think it's a great fight.
All done? Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We are going to invite Eddie and Tom to the front of the stage now for the customary handshake photo. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for your questions. The start of a new era.